Welcome to Kit Katastrophe. My name is Kit, and today we'll be taking a look at Transformers Studio Series Leader Class Blackout. This figure came out in 2018 as part of Wave 1 of the Leader assortment, and represents Blackout's appearance in the 2007 film Transformers. Blackout's alternate mode is a Sikorsky MH-53 Pavlo helicopter, just as he was in the 2007 film. And, without a doubt, this helicopter can only be described with one word: huge. Of course, being a leader class figure, Blackout's expected to be pretty big, but the absolute unit of a rotor extends his dominance in all directions with its impressive... well, I can't really say wingspan, can I? That being said, the proportions are spot on to my civilian eye, although the vehicle mode was quite recognizable to my ex-military family members, even if they called it the slightly upscaled Super Stallion. Sadly, he doesn't feature quite as many paint applications as the premium edition movie Voyager, but he's no blank canvas either. The United States Air Force markings adorn the fuselage and sponson struts, along with his iconic 4500X marking on the tail. By the coaxial rotor, he even sports his name like some sort of Generation 2 wannabe. Finally, his 4500X marker is placed below a cheeky Decepticon badge on the nose. Besides that, he has some other mechanical detail picked out in a nice near-black paint. While the color scheme may be drab, it's definitely mostly realistic. Features in this mode are pretty bare bones, but kind of expected. Much like Dropkick, who I've covered previously, Blackout's main rotor is able to spin, but not freely, while the coaxial rotor is more free. This frictiony main rotor is mostly there for stability during transformation and in robot mode. Meanwhile, on the underside, a little pet is waiting to jump out and burrow into the earth. This is Scorponok, who features a remarkably well-detailed sculpt with some nice colorwork to boot. The face is especially well done, although I would have liked if the secondary eyes were also picked out in red. Scorponok features 4 points of articulation, 1 in each claw and 2 in the tail, and is a nice companion piece. Unfortunately, his connection in the rear of the helicopter mode is a little lacking, but that's alright since we're about to get into transformation. The sweeping back of the rotor blades is an iconic and fun part of this transformation scheme, which is then ruined by taking off the rear rotor entirely. I'm not a big fan of parts forming, but this will serve a greater purpose. From there, the transformation actually isn't too different from the original Voyager figures, at least in terms of where everything comes from. The steps themselves are wholly different and make the process of Blackout's conversion really fresh. I'm a little iffy on the tolerances of the arm panels though, they don't really like to peg into each other. The head reveal is a lot more dynamic and far easier to perform than the original version without a doubt. During transformation, Blackout can feel really unwieldy as huge chunks of helicopter flop about before you get around to forming their respective parts of the robot, but they all coalesce nicely for the final product. Also, one last note, the backpack does indeed tab into his lower waist, making for a more secure robot mode.
Damn, boy, he's thick!
Studio Series Blackout's robot mode is easily the single greatest attempt at capturing the on-screen appearance thus far. Nearly every important detail is presented nearly flawlessly, and his proportions are to die for. Thankfully, he compacts a fair deal, making him a bit easier to handle. Just look at that head sculpt in all its screen-accurate splendor, with the various spines and the insectoid mandibles done up in a nice gunmetal gray, and the ferocious beady eyes picked out in a piercing red. Blackout doesn't feature much more paint besides some more gunmetal on the skirt plating. While we're in the area, let's take a look at the legs. They're beautifully sculpted and are actually rendered in digitigrade fashion, rather than the plantigrade stalks of his original Voyager figure. It's a shame that there are chunks of helicopter kibble on the bottom of his feet, even more so with the Air Force decals printed on those pieces. I fear for the longevity of those decals. As for other problems, the shoulders simply refuse to lock into the body, and the hinge they're on is kinda floppy, meaning posing can be a little bit of a chore. Further down the arm, the hands are permanently locked in a duckbill fashion, like he's trying to fish something out from under the fridge. As for features in robot mode, the vehicle mode gun can point forward for an approximation of his never-used chest cannon from the first movie. Also, the Scorponok figure can be placed on Blackout's back, which can help for storage. Finally, the rear rotor can mount on either arm, and here's where I need to make a correction. In my movie Blackout review, I stated that using the main rotor to emulate his attack mode from the movie was inaccurate, as Blackout used his rear rotor. This is neither here nor there, as while the main rotor did stay on Blackout's back in the film, the weapon he used featured 6 rotor blades instead of the real Pavlov's 4. This problem also extends to Grindor's CG model, except it's even more inaccurate as the Super Stallion has 7 rotor blades and Grindor's robot mode only displays Blackout's 6. Maybe he hid the 7th somewhere else for the sake of symmetry? Strangely enough, Blackout's box art portrays him wielding his main rotor as a weapon with only 4 blades visible. Anyway, Blackout's rotor weapon throws screen accurately out the window for the sake of a weapon that would actually work in real life, which I actually prefer. Besides that, Blackout's last accessory is his Studio Series stage, titled Desert Base Assault. It represents the opening scene of the first Transformers film, where Blackout attacked the US Sachsen Air Base in Qatar, which I'm happy they went with instead of yet another Mission City backdrop. Blah blah blah, I don't use these, you know the drill. Let's talk posing. Jumping into his primary joints, Blackout has a ball-jointed head with good side-to-side and forward-to-back motion with a noticeable tilt, a strangely tight hinge at the shoulder which allows decent forward and backward range, along with another hinge allowing for outward motion with what feels like a detent near the fully outward position, at least on his left arm. Substantially looser elbow hinges that only go 90 degrees. Ratcheted hip joints that don't move very far forward without banging into the front skirt, but he can nearly do the full splits. Hinges at the knee and ankle, which works as a reverse knee due to the digitigrade nature of his build. As for secondary joints, Blackout has bicep swivels, which can perform a full 360-degree turn, barely moving wrist hinges that only move up and down, thigh swivels, which can perform a full 360-degree turn, and full movement at the forward and backward and side-to-side degrees at the toes, which are an ankle analog. Blackout's tertiary joints include a limited analog of a butterfly joint due to the floppy nature of the shoulder assemblies, opening and closing thumbs, and adjustable front skirts. Blackout is a fairly posable figure that meets all of my basic criteria and features a lot of bonus joints that do wonders for posing. His biggest missing point of articulation would be at the waist, but I find this excusable due to his transformation and construction. Still, Blackout feels only slightly limited, due only to his bulky design. He's no brick and can pull off a multitude of poses. Studio Series Blackout is the leader-sized update to the original Bayformer that we've been waiting for over 10 years, and he definitely lives up to the hype. With an absolutely legendary helicopter mode, a complex and intricate transformation, and a beast of a robot mode, Blackout is absolutely worth the price of admission, and is my favorite Studio Series figure I've acquired so far, bar none. This has been Kit Katastrophe. It's time to transform and roll out.